A Toledo family asked for help to find a 13-year-old who had been missing for more than 2 days. Her name was Kei'Mani Latigue. What followed was a chase, a confrontation, and a tragedy that would shake an entire community. It was Monday morning, March 17, 2025, when Dorothy Latigue arrived home after working an overnight shift. Almost immediately, she sensed something wasn't right. Her granddaughter, 13-year-old Kei'Mani Latigue, whom she had legal custody of, was nowhere to be found. Normally, Kei'Mani would have already left for school by the time Dorothy returned. But what made this different was that Kei'Mani's personal belongings were still inside the house. Her glasses, her house keys, and her cell phone. Her underclothes were folded near the couch, her pajamas crumpled on the dining room floor, and the stove, it had been left on. The last confirmed sighting of Kei'Mani was the night before, Sunday, March 16th, at around 10 p.m. when she was with her biological father, Darnell Jones. Kei'Mani's father said he saw his daughter late Sunday night after she called him, afraid to be home alone. He explained that he came over because she said it seemed like somebody was trying to break into the house. So he and his cousin sat there for an hour and left around 12:30 in the morning. Dorothy called Kei'Mani's school, Spring Elementary, to check in. That's when she learned her granddaughter hadn't shown up for class. Growing increasingly anxious, she continued calling family and friends, hoping someone had seen or heard from her. But no one had, and Kei'Mani's phone went straight to voicemail. With each passing hour, Dorothy's concern deepened. Eventually, she contacted the police. She called to make a police report, identifying it as a missing person case. When asked for her name and who was missing, she provided the information. The dispatcher asked if this was her daughter or son. Dorothy explained it was her granddaughter. When asked if she had custody, she confirmed she did. Dorothy explained Kei'Mani was 13 years old. When asked how long she had been missing, Dorothy said that to the best of her understanding, she had just been missing that morning. She had called the school and went up to the school, and they said Kei'Mani wasn't there. Dorothy identified which school Kei'Mani attended, Spring Elementary. When asked if she remembered what Kei'Mani was wearing before she left, Dorothy said no, explaining that Kei'Mani was usually already at school before she got home from work. She provided Kei'Mani's description and last name. When asked if Kei'Mani had a phone on her, Dorothy said she did, but it was dead because it was going straight to voicemail. The dispatcher said officers would be out to help. Toledo police arrived quickly. They conducted an initial search of the home and a formal investigation was launched. By Friday, March 21st, with no leads and no sign of Kei'Mani, the community mobilized. Volunteers, family members, and complete strangers joined together in a citywide search effort. News reports explained that Kei'Mani Latigue hadn't been seen since Sunday night. Family, friends, and even strangers formed a search party in the area of East Manhattan and Stickney. Much of the search for Kei'Mani was focused on North Toledo, where she was reported missing from. Search team volunteers stepped up their efforts to try and locate the missing teen. Family members described Kei'Mani as someone who loved to dance and liked to play basketball. She had joined the basketball team that year and was doing great things. With flyers in hand and hope in their hearts, they explained that she didn't get in trouble and didn't do stuff like running away. Family, friends, and her mother, who traveled from Cleveland, were in North Toledo going block by block looking for the missing 13-year-old. Her mother said she hadn't slept in 3 days. She hadn't eaten in 3 days. She had never had a seizure before and had experienced 3 since Kei'Mani went missing. The teen had not been seen since Sunday night after 10 p.m. Her grandmother, who was her guardian, said she came home from work and the door was unlocked. Volunteers from across Toledo and even from Cary, Ohio showed up to help. One volunteer said they just wanted to come out and see what they could do to support, thinking that if it was their child, they would want others to come out and do what they could. 3 days later, the search ended in tragedy. On March 24th, investigators found Kei'Mani's body inside a dilapidated abandoned house on Miami Street in East Toledo. She had suffered severe injuries, including large wounds to her neck and the loss of both hands. Less than 24 hours later, the Lucas County coroner released the official autopsy report, ruling her death a homicide caused by multiple incised wounds to the neck. News of the discovery sent shock waves throughout the community. For a week, people had held out hope. Now that hope turned to heartbreak. Back at Spring Elementary, grief counselors were brought in. Teachers struggled to find the words. Classmates created a makeshift memorial outside the school. One handwritten sign read, "You were always smiling, Kei'Mani. We miss you." Kei'Mani was just days away from celebrating her 14th birthday. A spokesperson for Toledo Public Schools said she had recently been recognized at the school's honor roll assembly and was scheduled to receive a kindness award that same week. The district said in a statement that Kei'Mani would be remembered as being very personable and someone who got along well with others. But the grief quickly turned to outrage. Beneath the mourning was a pressing question. Could this have been prevented? Detectives quickly turned their attention to Darnell Jones, the last known person to see Kei'Mani alive. During questioning, Jones allegedly gave conflicting statements about his whereabouts and movements the night she disappeared. Then, he made an odd request. Jones called his girlfriend and asked her to disable the home security cameras. She refused. According to her statement, she was in the bedroom when a relative observed Jones removing items from his SUV. He brought them into the house and tucked them beneath the basement stairs. Concerned, the girlfriend contacted police. Officers secured a search warrant and retrieved the items into evidence. Soon after, Jones realized the police had entered the home and that the evidence was gone. That's when he fled, never to be seen again by the girlfriend. Toledo police issued a BOLO, "Be on the lookout," alert for Darnell Jones. The alert was sent to agencies across the state. By the next morning, March 25th, at around 10 a.m., a tactical unit from the Columbus Police Department located Jones near the intersection of 2nd and Denison. Officers called out to him, telling him to come there and not to do it. They asked for his name. Jones responded telling them to kill him. Officers urgently told him to show his hands right now. They told him to pull his hand out, warning him they were serious. Then shots were fired. Officers called out that the suspect sounded good and told him not to move. They identified that he had a gun in his hand, or what they thought was a gun but turned out to be a walkie-talkie, though there were actual guns nearby. They warned him not to move or he would get shot. Officers told him to get on his belly. They got handcuffs on him. One officer thanked another and said they would get Jones help. Jones said he just wanted to die. The officer said he knew that, but they couldn't allow it. Jones said he couldn't do this and didn't want to live. Officers called for medical support and secured Jones. They worked to determine where he was hit. Officers identified he was hit in the arm and possibly other places. They called for a medic urgently. Officers tried to keep Jones conscious and calm, telling him he was going to be fine and to take deep breaths. Officers asked Jones, confirming his name was Darnell, if he had anything else on him. They asked if he had any more guns and where the other gun was. Jones seemed to fade in and out of consciousness. Officers kept bystanders back and waited for the medic to arrive. Medical personnel arrived and began treating Jones. Officers helped coordinate getting him onto a stretcher. They had to remove his handcuffs so medical staff could treat him properly. Officers noted he was hit in the arm, leg, and possibly the left chest. According to police, Jones pulled a gun during the encounter and was shot by officers. He was hospitalized in critical condition, but later stabilized. Court records alleged that Jones admitted to dragging Kei'Mani to the abandoned house where he inflicted the fatal injuries. After his arrest, Jones was booked into the Franklin County Jail and held without bond. Due to the injuries from his arrest, he was housed in the jail's medical ward. On April 18th, he appeared in Lucas County Court for the first time. A judge set his total bond at $4 million, $2 million for murder and $1 million each for abduction and felonious assault. But just when it seemed the case couldn't get any darker, another unexpected development occurred. On the morning of April 19, 2025, less than a month after Kei'Mani's body was found, the abandoned house on Miami Street went up in flames. The building had already been marked as a code red structure due to its dangerous condition. By the time fire crews arrived, it was fully engulfed in flames. Because of the home's instability and its role in an active homicide investigation, firefighters made the decision to fight the blaze from the outside only, avoiding entry. Investigators later classified the fire as suspicious, and it was being treated as a possible arson. In response to public concern, Toledo officials quickly reassured the community that all critical evidence had already been collected and secured well before the fire broke out. Within hours, demolition crews were on site, and by late morning, the structure had been completely leveled. The city moved fast, citing both public safety and community trauma as key reasons for the emergency teardown. And yet, something important was spared. Before the fire, community members had created a growing memorial at the site. Flowers, candles, handwritten notes, and stuffed animals lining the sidewalk in Kei'Mani's honor. Thankfully, those items had been carefully removed ahead of time. They were preserved and relocated, a small act of care amid so much destruction. Still, for many, watching the house burn felt symbolic, like the final erasure of a scene too painful to leave standing. Less than 2 weeks after the fire, on April 30th, Darnell Jones appeared in court again, this time for his formal arraignment. Thanks to courtroom cameras, the public got their first direct look at Jones since his arrest. Seated before the judge, he entered a plea to the charges laid out against him tied to the death of his 13-year-old daughter. The hearing was procedural, but it carried weight. For many watching, it was a jarring moment. A man who was supposed to be a protective father now standing accused of one of the most brutal crimes in recent memory. The judge began the proceedings, noting they were there to begin the adjudication of the charges against Mr. Jones. He would go over those charges and death penalty specifications and cover a lot of other necessary ground. The judge addressed Jones, acknowledging that there were a lot of people there that day. He could appreciate if Jones was anxious or nervous. He wanted Jones to do his best to focus on him and the questions he would ask and the information he would give. The judge said he had a lot to go over and wanted to make sure Jones understood. Jones confirmed he understood. The judge asked for his full name. Jones said he went by Ogletree, explaining that they had him listed as Jones. When asked to explain why he called himself Ogletree, Jones said his birth name was Darnell Overton and his adopted name was Darnell Jones. But ever since he was about 19, he had been going by Ogletree. The judge asked if his birth certificate said Ogletree or Jones. Jones said it said Jones, but his social security card, ID, and all his taxes, everything had been under Ogletree. The judge asked where Jones was born. He said Ohio. When asked where he was raised and where he had lived, he said he lived in Cleveland, Columbus, and Toledo, but mainly Toledo. The judge asked if he was a United States citizen. Jones confirmed yes.
If you're enjoying this story, kindly do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. It is free and won't cost anything, but it means the world to us. We're just a small channel trying to grow. Thank you, and back to the video.
The judge asked if Jones could speak, read, and write in English. Jones confirmed yes. When asked if he spoke, read, or wrote any other language, Jones said no, just English. The judge asked if Jones had any problems reading, hearing, or seeing. Jones said no. When asked if he wore contacts, Jones said sometimes he wore reading glasses. The judge noted there would be some stuff to read that day and that they had an indictment on the big screen. If at any time Jones needed help with anything, he should let either his attorneys or the judge know. The judge asked about hearing aids. Jones said no and confirmed he could hear the judge okay. The judge asked him to speak up when he could. When asked if he was taking any medications, Jones said pain meds from the incident and some psychiatric meds for anxiety. The judge asked if he was taking those medications pursuant to a doctor's order. Jones said yes. When asked if he was taking them according to those instructions, he said yes. The judge asked if those medications affected his ability to understand what the judge was telling him. Jones said no. When asked if it affected his ability to answer questions, he said no. The judge reminded Jones that if he went too fast or if Jones didn't understand something, to just let him know. When asked if Jones had been diagnosed or treated for any mental illness, Jones said yes. When asked what kind, he listed depression, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, ADHD, and ADD, saying a lot had been involved. The judge said he didn't want to get too much into Jones's personal medical records, but the reason he was asking these questions was to make sure Jones understood what was being asked. That was the only reason, to make sure that if Jones had any kind of medical condition, physical condition, or handicap, it didn't impair him from answering questions and understanding what the judge was talking about. The judge then went through the indictment, which contained 15 different counts. He explained that a count was simply a charge or alleged violation. Count 1 was aggravated murder, an unclassified felony with specifications. It alleged that Jones purposely, and with prior calculation and design, caused the death of Kei'Mani Latigue, in violation of code sections making it aggravated murder. Beneath that was a felony murder specification, which alleged that Jones committed, attempted to commit, or was fleeing immediately after committing or attempting to commit rape. And either Jones was the principal offender in the commission of the aggravated murder, or if not the principal offender, he committed the aggravated murder with prior calculation and design. Another specification also said felony murder, essentially the same as the one just read but with kidnapping replacing rape. A third felony murder specification replaced rape or kidnapping with aggravated burglary. Otherwise, those three specifications were essentially the same. The judge noted there was also a murder to escape specification, which said the offense was committed for the purpose of escaping detection, apprehension, trial, or punishment for another offense committed by Jones, specifically rape, kidnapping, and/or aggravated burglary. Below that was a sexual motivation specification, saying that Jones committed the offense with sexual motivation. Finally, there was a sexually violent predator specification, saying that Jones was a sexually violent predator. Darnell Jones sat before the judge, quietly pleading not guilty to a string of violent charges. But what played out in that courtroom was only part of the story, because as the legal process moved forward, so did the investigation into Jones himself. And what surfaced was a pattern, a long, disturbing history of criminal behavior with minimal consequences. Court records showed that Jones had been in and out of the criminal justice system for years, with arrests dating back to 2011 and only serving relatively short periods of jail time. There were convictions for domestic assault, resisting arrest, attempted arson, and weapons violations. There were also reports of substance abuse, consistent, repeated red flags that painted a picture of a man spiraling long before Kei'Mani disappeared. And yet, despite all of it, he somehow still had access to his daughter. That reality raised serious questions about who knew what and when. Soon, the focus turned to the County Children's Services Agency, which came under intense scrutiny. According to a statement released by the agency and authorized by county prosecutors, the Lucas County Children's Services had investigated multiple prior reports regarding Kei'Mani's care. The agency received 3 separate complaints, one in December 2023 and 2 more in March 2024, all involving concerns about physical discipline in the home. In each case, investigators interviewed Kei'Mani privately. Each time she told them she felt safe. Based on those interviews, the agency concluded there was no legal basis to remove her from the home. Notably, the agency also stated they had received no reports specifically naming Darnell Jones and were not even aware of his role or presence in Kei'Mani's life during the time of their investigations. Even more troubling, the agency admitted that even if they had known about Jones, it might not have changed their assessment or the outcome of the case. An official explained that it would depend on what they would have learned from whoever was identified in that capacity. But no, they determined that the placement with the grandmother was appropriate. All the basic needs of the child were being met. She was getting all of her sustenance, housing conditions were fine, and her school and medical conditions were being met. So the presence of a father would not have caused them, the official thought, to recommend to the juvenile court that they change custody or placement. The agency said it was willing to release further information to address public concern, but only once prosecutors confirmed it wouldn't jeopardize the integrity of the criminal case. Still, many in the community remained unconvinced. Public frustration grew. Advocacy groups called for an independent review of the Children's Services protocols and accountability standards. And Kei'Mani's former teacher even went public, saying she believed the tragedy was preventable. A crowd gathered at the abandoned house on Miami and Wilmot, chanting the name of a girl who would never be forgotten, 13-year-old Kei'Mani Latigue. Someone said that, as their pastor would say, a family that prayed together stayed together, and this was the time when they needed to come together. Many of the mourners did not know Kei'Mani personally, but gathered flowers, balloons, and lit candles in her memory. People described her as just a joy to be around, and said she would be deeply missed. Karen Harabedian was Kei'Mani's teacher the previous year. She said Kei'Mani was very sweet and she enjoyed having her at school every day. Kei'Mani greeted her every single morning with a hug. That was all she truly ever wanted, affection. Harabedian said affection was something that Kei'Mani might have needed more of. She felt this was preventable. The teacher said she and other staff members called Children's Services to report concerning things Kei'Mani had said. Kei'Mani came to school with visible injuries and told them some things that were happening in her household. Harabedian said Kei'Mani was with a different guardian during that time. Still, she wished something could have gone differently. As of the date of this upload, Darnell Jones remains in custody at the Lucas County Jail, held on a $4 million bond. He has pleaded not guilty to multiple charges, including aggravated murder, kidnapping, and a series of felonies tied to the abuse and death of his 13-year-old daughter. Prosecutors have confirmed they intend to pursue the death penalty. A tentative trial date is set for April 2026, but with more than 200 pieces of evidence, including surveillance footage, body cam video, digital records, and witness statements, that timeline could still change. What's clear is that this is one of the most complex, high-profile, and emotionally charged cases Northwest Ohio has seen in years. And through it all, it's easy to lose sight of who the story is really about. Kei'Mani Latigue was a bright, kind-hearted 7th grader who was just days away from her 14th birthday. She made the honor roll. She was set to receive a kindness award. Her teachers remembered her smile. Her classmates remembered her laughter. She was a child who deserved to be safe, to be protected, and to grow up surrounded by love, not tragedy. Her name was Kei'Mani and she mattered. Every crime leaves a trace, and we're here to follow them. Subscribe for more real, haunting stories you won't forget.